Good day, ladies and gentlemen, once again. This is another recording, and it is on creditors reconciliation. We are reconciling two things. We are reconciling creditors control account, and we are reconciling it with the total list of creditors or creditors list. So that is the reconciliation we are doing. We are not doing creditors reconciliation statement. There are recordings that you'll see where I have creditors reconciliation statement, but here we are reconciling the list of creditors with the creditors control account. The two must always reconcile at the end of the period. Now let us just verify that from our requirements we have 10 additional information and we have our requirements that states that we are to draw up the correct creditors control account, then after reconcile it with the closing balance of the total list of creditors. As I did mention to you, that is the focus of our reconciliation for this exercise. A very easy and very lovely topic, if I were to say so. And if you were at any point in time in our test be given a total of 26 marks, this is a must grab 26 marks. Perhaps if an error was to be made, 23 marks will be reasonable. Now I have recorded, or I've already done the ledger account for us for creditors control ledger account and also the list of creditors. In the list of creditors, note that I'm using the debit and the credit side. And I also want to emphasize the fact that there is the plus and the minus that I want to rewrite for you. We know that creditors increase on the credit side their liabilities. They decrease on the debit side. They increase because we have bought on credit, and they decrease because we paid our creditors or because we returned something to our creditors. So perhaps obviously because we are dealing with the reconciliation, there could be errors that are done that can lead to an increase on the other side or decrease on the other side. So now in the creditors control ledger account, nothing has changed. This is where all creditors are recorded. In the list of creditors is the individual creditors, but the total of the list must be equal to the total that is under our creditors control ledger account. So now debit side, we know that is where our creditors decrease. Credit side, that is where our creditors increase. So now we'll be recording and correcting the transactions accordingly. Now let us read from the information provided in this question 3. It says, at the end of the month of June 2018, we know that if it's at the end, there must be a beginning of the month of June, which is 2018. So there must be a start of that month. Then it further says that the creditors control account balance of Porcello traders did not agree. They say the creditors control account balance. Which creditors control account balance are they referring to? They are referring to this balance. So now, in fact, not that balance to be specific. They are referring to the balance at the end. The balance of 65,320.25 is not the same as the total the total list of creditors. Here we have our total list of creditors with an amount of 68,325. We can see that 65,000 and 68,000 are not balancing. But at the end of the reconciliation, these two must be the same. The total of the list of creditors must be the same as the balance in the creditors control account. Now, because we are not doing the creditors reconciliation statement, but we are reconciling creditor statement with the list of creditors, so we start with the opening balance. Then after we also deal with the balance that we have in there. Then we'll be adjusting from the figure that are already here, adding or subtracting on these figures. So now we have an opening balance that is on the credit side, and obviously with the list of creditors, the opening balance of 68,328, which is likely to be a balance at the end, is also the balance we'll be using. So now let us start with the creditors control balance. We have a balance that is given to us. Then the balance is on the 1st of the month of June in the year 2018. And this balance is 45,400 rands. Balance is 45,400 rands. Then under our list of creditors, we don't write it as balance. It's not in a specific account. We're just using the column approach or the debit and the credit. It was 68,000. Let's just verify that it was 68,325. 68,325. This is the total. Which one was to call as the balance at the end of the period, which is a credit balance also. It's very unlikely that we'll have a balance in our creditors list or creditors control, which is on the debit side, unless a serious error was done on the debit side, but it's very unlikely for that to happen. Then now we have to go to the additional information. But I just want to note that when we make a correction, we need to check if is an error in the cash payment journal, or is an error in the creditors allowance journal, or is an error in the creditors journal, or in the cash receipt journal, or is an error in the general journal. And also we do have general journal on this side. So the transaction most of the time will tell us where the error or which of these does the error affect. Was it a payment that was understated in the cash payment journal or overstated? Or was it a return, which is creditors allowance journal? Or was it a payment? Or was it on the purchases? Or was it a cash receipt side or a general journal that was made as an error? So now we will be recording. In other words, when we make an adjustment, if let us say the error was made in the cash payment journal, we need either to deduct our cash payment journal. We'll say bank and discount open brackets 38,250 minus 700 if we need to deduct the amount that was recorded incorrectly in the cash payment journal if it needs to be deducted. So now we need to look at the transaction in terms of the details. Then now let us go to read our additional information. It says first, we must accept that the opening balance of the creditors control. Remember, the opening balance of the creditors control is the 45,400. They say we must assume that it is correct. We must assume that it is correct. However, after a thorough investigation, the following errors and omissions were detected. So now there are errors that were detected and omissions that were detected. Therefore, now we need to correct errors and record the amounts that were not yet recorded. So let us then now analyze from transaction number 1 and see which one gets to be recorded where. It says the total of the creditors control column, or if I were to say of the creditors control column. The minute there's a column, remember in our creditors control, in our creditors journal, there's a creditors control column. So if they speak of a column, that means they are referring to the creditors control. They are referring to either creditors control or a cash payment journal if there's a column, but it must be one of the journals, just to be clear on that one. But they say under the creditors column in the cash payment journal, now they clarify that the creditors control is under our cash payment journal. The creditors control column that we are referring to is in our cash payment journal. And remember that in our cash payment journal, that's where we pay our creditors. And if we pay our creditors, we expect them to decrease on the debit side. And now this total is not a list of a creditor. There is no name of a creditor that is mentioned in here. So the list of the creditor is not affected, but the total of the creditors control column in the cash payment journal. So now what are they saying about this column? They say this column in the cash payment journal is underestimated. Remember, when we pay our creditors, we pay them on the debit side, where they are decreasing whenever we pay them. So now there we can see cash payment journal. So in other words, this amount which come from the cash payment journal, as the transaction has stipulated that is in the cash payment journal, this amount coming from the cash payment journal is less than what was supposed to be. That's what undercasted meaning it's less than what was supposed to be. By how much? By 2,500. So we need to increase that 38,250 by 2,500. How do we do that? We say 38,250 plus 2,500 and the total goes there. So now let's record that in the creditors control ledger account. Bank plus discount. This is 38,250 plus 2,500. There might be another transaction that might need to be corrected or adjusted here. So it will be 38,250 plus 2,500. This gives us 40,750. So 40,750. Don't write the total immediately after every adjustment, or there might be another plus or minus from the correction that we will be dealing with throughout this period. Now in this case, the list of creditors is not affected because they referred specifically to the total that is incorrect, the total of the creditors control in the cash payment journal. There is not even a name of a creditor, or they did not make mention of the list of creditors. So the list of creditors in this case is not affected. So we don't record anything under the list of creditors. Then we therefore now come to transaction number 2. Transaction number 2 says a credit note. Remember, a credit note is when goods are returned to a supplier. Is when goods are returned to a supplier. This credit note was received, and just to give more explanation, the only return we have in this case will always be a return to a supplier. Why? Because we are dealing with the suppliers who are called creditors and the individual suppliers who are in the list of creditors. So this will be a return that we have received an invoice from our creditor B Bakeng for goods returned has not been recorded. So now they say this has not been recorded. They don't say it was not recorded in the creditors list or not recorded in the creditors allowance journal. So now that means our list of creditors, we need to record this, and also under our creditors allowance journal, where we are recording every return of goods back to our suppliers. So now we need to check now if creditors allowance journal needs to be affected. That means creditors control column. Remember, whenever we deal with the journal, the creditors control is affected because in your cash payment journal, there is a creditors control column. In your creditors journal, there is a creditors control column. In your creditors allowance journal, there is a creditors control column. So whenever the journal is affected, it is very likely that the creditors control will be affected. So now that is why creditors allowance journal for the return of goods that they mentioned will be affected, and the list of creditors, which is B Bakeng, will also be affected in this case. Now let us start with the creditors allowance journal. When we return goods, we record under the creditors allowance journal. In this case, they said it has not been recorded. And now when we return goods, we record on the debit side of this ledger account. There are the returns. There are the returns. So how are we going to do? We'll open brackets 2,625 plus the amount of 625, which is the 625. We need to wait for another one. There might be another one. And I don't want us to be tempted to write the total all the time. Then after, we need to record the same amount under our list of creditors, writing the name of the creditor. Now let us start with the returns. Remember, I also mentioned to you, I think I did emphasize again here, I also did mention to you that we need to check if does it affect creditors allowance journal. Yes, that is why now it will be recorded under returns, which is creditors allowance journal. Then we say returns. Returns, we have 2,625 plus 625. Then if there's no other entry to be recorded, our total will be 2,625 plus 625. This will give us 3,250. 3,250. Because it was not recorded, then we also need to record it in the list of creditors. It was not recorded in the list of creditors at all. Then we need to record it also in here. Remember, a return affects our creditor on the debit side. So it was not recorded. Then now we are recording the return on the debit side where we are decreasing our creditors. Then we go to transaction number 3. Very sorry if I'm moving very slowly. I want to capture the students whom their knowledge of accounting is not very deep. Then transaction number 3 say that the account, now they are very specific. The account of who? They are not saying creditors control or in the journal. They say the account of who? This is the creditor. That means in the list of the creditors. Now that's where our focus is. The account of K. Kato, a creditor, was balanced incorrectly, and the balance should be 1,300, not 3,100. So now that means we are focusing now on the list of creditor, that specific creditor. 1,300, they recorded 3.1 instead of 1,300. That means 1,800 will be the amount that we are adjusting. Remember, they recorded 3.1, and this 3.1 was recorded on the correct side in the account of this customer, but it was not supposed to be 3.8, it was supposed to be 1,800. So now the difference, which is 1,800, will be recorded on the debit side, because remember, the total or the balance of a creditor will be on the credit side. So the balance of a creditor will be on the credit side. So that means on the credit side, they recorded 3,100 instead of recording 1,300. So we need to reduce the 3,000 by 1.8. And for us to reduce the credit side, we must record 1.8 on the debit side. So now that is why the 1.8 of this customer, of this creditor, K. Koto, will be on the debit side 1,800. Remember, they recorded the balance on the credit side because the balance of a creditor is always on the credit side. So the balance on the credit side of this creditor was overstated by 1,800 in other terms. We can also use that terminology. It was overstated by 1,800. Hence, they recorded 3.1 instead of 1,300. So now this was the balance of a specific creditor, K. Koto. So now hence it does not affect our creditors control. Then it says creditors list was undercasted. Now they are very specific. Creditors list was undercasted by how much? By 250. So now we just need to go to our creditors list where we are correcting the total. Now this is correction of total. Correction of total. And now they say it was undercasted, meaning the credit side was less than it was supposed to be. And be reminded that our creditors total or balance is on the credit side. So if they say the total was undercasted, that means credit side was less than it was supposed to be. So we need to increase it by 250. It's supposed to be up by 250 rands. Now we are still moving in that same spirit. We therefore now go to the next transaction, which is transaction number 5. Now under our transaction number 5, I also want to highlight the fact that they say the entry or the entry of an invoice. Remember, the minute we say an invoice, that means we bought something on credit and we receive an invoice when we buy on credit. But a credit note is received when we return to our creditor, which is our suppliers. In this case, we have an invoice of 750 that is received from Morongwa suppliers, was omitted from the subsidiary journal. Remember, when we omit in the subsidiary journal, if we had to look at the exercise I did on the subsidiary journal with the name record transactions on subsidiary journals. In that recording, I emphasize or I had the templates of all the columns in there for you. There is a column that is called creditors control. Creditors control. In that column, you write the name of the creditor that you bought on credit from. If in this case we bought from Morongwa, this will be under details. Then we write under the creditors control column. Then now remember, this is a list of a creditor. This is a creditor, a list of a creditor. Then after we record all the creditors and their amounts, another creditor and their amounts, then we'll have a total. This total will go to the creditors control. So now in this case, they are telling us that it was omitted in the subsidiary journal when we bought on credit. When it's omitted here, there is no way we can record it in the list of creditors because we don't have it in here. It's missing in the subsidiary journal, meaning there is no record of this creditor, which is the list, that specific creditor in the subsidiary journal. And if it's missing in here, obviously under total, under the creditors control column in the creditors journal, it will also be missing. So now that is what therefore now it means in this one. It means the list of creditors will be affected and also the creditors control will be affected because the whole journal, the amount was missing. The whole creditors journal, the amount was missing. Sorry, not that one. The whole subsidiary journal, this was missing. So the creditor was not recorded and the total of the creditors control column will therefore be affected. Now on that same note, that means now we need to say if this is a subsidiary journal. Remember, a subsidiary journal where there's an invoice is when we bought on credit. So now that means we need to come to the ledger account and say, where do we buy on credit? Where do we buy on credit? There is our purchases. That's where we buy on credit. So now we need to say purchases, which is under our creditors journal where we buy on credit. It will be 59,850 plus 750 plus 750 plus 750. So now that is what we will do. We will be then recording this under purchases in the creditors journal because we bought here. Why I'm saying we bought? Because I said we received invoice. We receive invoice when we buy on credit. we have bought on credit under our purchases. There's a total rate there, 59,850. 59,850 plus 750. I want to wait not to write the total because there might be another amount. Then under our list of creditors, now we need to write this creditor, which is Morongwa Suppliers. Morongwa Suppliers. We bought on credit and this was not recorded. So if we buy on credit, we're supposed to increase our supplier on the credit side by the value of the inventory that we bought, which is inclusive of VAT. But ignore VAT because it's not in this topic. Just be aware that VAT is quite important also. Then now we have recorded this one in both occasions, but I don't want to write the total under the creditors control ledger account, so that if there's another one that need to be recorded, I can also take that into consideration. In here says the creditors list was undercasted by 250. Is specifically speaking to the creditors list. It specifically speaks to the creditors list that was undercasted by 250. So now what do? We record the 250 that was undercasted. So now we look at the site where the 250 will be recorded. Let me just verify that one. Just verify that one. The creditors list was undercasted by 250. So the 250 is the one that, oh no, we have completed that one. Completed that one. Was now wondering why the repeat. Then we are in number 6. The total of the creditors journal was overcasted by 500. The total of the creditors journal. We are referring to the total of the creditors journal. Let me just check if I do have an exercise that can give us a refresh on this in terms of this total of the creditors journal, so that when you say total, we are a bit more familiar of what we are referring to. When you say total, when we refer to total is the total, the list therefore will not be affected. The list therefore will not be affected. Just looking for the perfect exercise that will show us this. If I don't have it in my display, yes, this is the one that we did. Now the question speaks of the creditors control column. We dealt with the creditors control. Here is our creditors control. Now when they say creditors control total, this is what they are referring to. This is the total they are referring to. Those watch the video, I said please do write these totals. This is another recording that I did. So now they are telling us that this total is the one that is incorrect. That means the individual list of creditors, that creditor and this creditor, they are correct. So the list of creditors assorted is only the total that has a question mark. So now remember, this total is the one that affects our creditors control ledger account. So hence now that will be adjusted in our creditors control ledger account, not under the list of creditors, because the list of creditors, meaning individual creditors, were not affected. All was well with them. Sorry to take that time, but I also wanted to show you when you say the total, what are we referring to? Now on that same note, we therefore now continue. We are told that this is the total of the creditors control column. Total of the creditors journal was overcasted, meaning that total was more than it was supposed to be. And that total is the one that goes to the credit side of the creditors journal. And it is where we are buying. Remember, under the creditors control, and another creditors control column, creditors control journal. That's where we buy on credit. And they also specified that this is creditors journal where we buy on credit. And in the ledger account, what do we name that? We name it purchases. So now we need to add this because they say it was underestimated or undercosted by 500 rands. So now let us go and we add that 500 under our purchases. I think we did have, yes, we can say here plus 500. Previously we had 750 that we added in there, just to make sure that the 750 is clear. Then we're adding 500. I think this will be the last one. Then we have now 59,850 plus 500 plus 750. Then this gives us a total of 61,000 or 60,000. Just to verify. Okay. Let us check. That is not a plus, that is a minus. So you have already identified that one. It was overcasted. Our purchases were overcasted in terms of the total, so this becomes a minus. Is 59,850 plus 750 minus 500. Then it gives us 60,100. Why are we deducting? Is because they said that it was overcasted. So that means the total that is in our creditors control column was overstated in the creditors journal. It was more than it was supposed to be, meaning our purchases were more than what they were supposed to be. So we need to decrease our purchases by an amount of 500 rands. Sorry for that error. I'm just used to the plus and the plus and the plus all the time. But in this case, the total was more than that, then we need to reduce it. So now we record that in our purchases in the creditors control. Number 7 says interest of 50 rand must be added to the account of creditor T TD Ltd. No entry was made for this, and we are adding it in the account of this specific creditor because of the fact that we charge interest. So now we have TD Ltd, and to add the interest of 50 rand, it will be increasing the account of this creditor on the credit side. Then we look at the next transaction, and this one is very clear. They mentioned that is the interest is to be added in the account of this creditor, which is specifically that creditor. Then it goes to the list of the creditor. In the creditors journal, there's nothing to be adjusted because we did not buy on credit, but the interest was charged on the account of this creditor. Then after we, because there's always interest for buying on credit, either on a monthly basis, they add interest. Number 8, it says a check payment of 900 to Huerano suppliers was correctly entered in the cash payment journal. So in the cash payment journal, it was sorted. If the cash payment journal was correct, remember, if cash payment journal is correct, what does that mean? That means your debit side of the creditors control where the CPJ is correct, meaning your creditors control account is recorded correct if the CPJ is correct, as they mention. I'm still analyzing. Then they say, but no amount was posted in the creditors ledger, which is the specific ledger of that specific creditor. So now that will mean that the amount of the 900 will be recorded in the list of creditors. The amount of 900 will be recorded in the list of creditors because in the cash payment journal, which is the debit side of the creditors control, is correct. But what is not correct is the list of that specific creditor, which is, as you can see, the Rhino suppliers. So now this 900 will go to the list of creditors. It will go to the list of creditors. Then we record that K, G, W, E, R, A, N, O suppliers. Now remember they said it was not recorded, and I want to also go there. Remember they said the payment, a check payment, we're making a payment here, so the payment was not recorded. So where do we record the payment? We record them on the debit side, because our suppliers or creditors, they decrease on the debit side when we pay them. And that's why now in the ledger account I refer to the debit side, where the debit side was correct, because our creditors control also they decrease in total on the debit side when we make payments. Then now we come to the next one, which is number 9. Number 9 says a credit note. We know that whenever there's a credit note, there's a return of goods. Now a credit note of 1.5 was received. If there's a credit note, there's a potential of the creditor's allowance journal and slash or the list of the creditor. I say that those two will be affected because of this return. In this case, they say a credit note of 1.5 received from a creditor B. Bailey for goods returned has been entered correctly in the creditor's allowance journal. It was recorded correctly where? In the creditor's allowance journal. Now let us go there. But they say, but has not been posted on the wrong side of the creditor's account. So if the creditor's allowance journal is correct, that means the creditor's control column is correct. Let us again do the same investigation from our activities in there. Then we are in the creditors allowance journal. This is our creditors allowance journal, and I did the total for this one on the day I was recording this recording. For those who have watched this one, then you'll know what I'm referring to. Now that means this total is in here, we recorded correct, and the total is also correct. And it could be written there under total, it doesn't matter, then you have your 920 there. This is the creditors allowance journal. So they say under this column, the creditors control column in the creditors allowance journal, this was a tick box, it was fine. This total was a tick box, it was fine. And this amount was recorded correctly on the debit side of the creditors control column under returns. So there's nothing to be done. But where the mistake was done, when we are now recording under our list of creditors that specific creditor by the name B. Bailey. What happened in there? The money was posted to the wrong side. The amount was recorded on the wrong side. First of all, which side was it supposed to be recorded? It was supposed to be recorded on the debit side. So that means they recorded the return on the credit side as if we bought something, yet it was a return. So now let us go and correct it on the correct side, which is our debit side. So now we have to write the name of this creditor, B. Bailey. It will be 1,500 times by 2. So now this will be 3,000 that we will be recording on the debit side. Let me clarify this one. Why is the case? Remember, the mistake was made. What did they do when they made a mistake? They recorded 1,500, which is correct amount, but it was on the wrong side. It's not supposed to be here. So the amount is correct, but it is on the wrong side. So they recorded 1.5. So now when we move the 1.5 to the debit side, it will be 1.5. Therefore 1.5 minus 1.5, it will be 0. Why I'm saying minus? This is a plus, this is a minus. So plus and minus will give us 0, meaning nothing is recorded. Therefore now we need to record 1.5 now on the correct side. Which side is supposed to be a return? It's on the debit side, 1.5. That is why now we have one amount as 3,000 on the debit side. So that's why we just double. If the amount is correct but on the wrong side, then what you do, you double the amount, you record it on the correct side. If the amount is correct but on the incorrect side, you double the amount, you record it on the correct side. So that's what we have just did in this case. The amount was correct, but it was on the wrong side. So we just double the amount, we record it on the correct side. The amount is correct, but on the incorrect side. So we double it and we record it on the correct side. I hope I said the right terminology. Then under number 10, it says an invoice. If we see an invoice, that means we bought something on credit. How much the invoice is 550. Is received from our supplier Tigris was entered correctly in the creditors journal, meaning the creditors control column is fine in the creditors control ledger account. We are referring to the 550 rand. Then it further says that, but it was posted twice on the creditors account, meaning in the list of creditor, this was recorded twice. So now how do we deal with the twice of the recording? Remember, this was the invoice. Invoice means we buy on credit. If we buy on credit, we record on the credit side of the creditors account, and under the creditors control is on the credit side. So on the credit side, they have recorded the amount as 1,100. That is twice on the credit side. Is it on the right side? Yes. Is the amount correct? No, the amount is doubled, but it's on the correct side. So how do we cancel this? We need to say on the debit side, record 550, so that we have a plus this side and minus this side. So it will be plus 1,100 minus 550 will be left with 550 sitting on the credit side. So now let us go and we do that the same thing under the list of creditors. We record the 550 of Tigris, if I still remember. Tigris, the 550 will be recorded on the debit side. Why? Because they doubled. Remember, they said it was recorded twice. It was recorded twice on the creditor's account, meaning it was recorded on the right side. They did not say on the wrong side. It was recorded on the right side, but they said 1,100 here, which is 550 divided times by 2. Verify that times 2, they recorded 1.1. So we only need here to have 550. So we reduce by 550, then we are left with 550 on the credit side. So that's why now we only record this one to reduce that 1.1 by 550 to become 550. So that is how we will be dealing with the calculation in here. Then we can have our total in here. Calculate the total of the bigger side. You will see that you will get to 67,575. 67,575. Your balance here will get to 62,500. Similarly, in here now we still need to do the other missing entries that were there, but we have not recorded them yet. Which are those entries? Remember, this one is done, this one is done, this one is there, this one is there. Then we need to record 1,040 to 35. 1,040 to 35. Then after we have what else? Just to verify that if there is no any other missing amount, we have 325. 325 is there. We'll record that one as is. Yeah, with those words now, then we can therefore do the recording. We have 235, which is only our general credit of 235 that needs to be recorded. Let me just check if there's no other missing amount that we should have recorded but did not record anywhere else. We did not record anywhere else. 550, 1.5, 900. 50 Rand interest that must be added to the account of the creditor TDIP. No entry was made for this account. The last entry that will be missing is the interest. Hope I won't be confusing with that. Is the interest that I think will need to be recorded lastly, because the interest was not recorded in the account. And now, because we did not buy, after the interest is added in here, our creditors control must also be adjusted. We need to say creditors control, we have an interest in here. So our general journal, this is not a purchases journal, it will be our general journal. We need to say 235 plus the 50 Rand, because our total creditors need to reflect how much we owe to our all creditors. But let us do the correction of everything, reconciling everything. We're starting now with the journal debits. Journal debits is 325. Remember that journal debit, we're taking this as is, that 325. There was no entry for this one. Then we have our bank of 1040. We have our bank of 1040. There's nothing that affected that bank. 1040. Then we have general credits. Our general credits is made of 235 plus the 50 Rand. And the 235 plus the 50 Rand will give us 210. Just check that. 235 plus 50 Rand, that gives us 285. So we have our 285 that sits in there. Then the interest can also be recorded separately. I think I did not remember it previously that we need to record the interest also in the total creditors, because it affects our total creditors, because at the end this is the creditor. It affected the account of the creditor, therefore now it needs to go to the creditors control. Then we can therefore now have our total in here, total of the bigger side, which is your 106,825. You can verify that total, 106,825. Then our balance carried down, will give us 62,500. Balance brought down 62,500. This is balance brought down. You can do verification. I've verified all amounts to be correct. 40,750, 3,250, 325. Then we have 285, 1,040, 60,100, 45,400. All the figures are correct. With those words, guys, thank you very much. Just small apology for forgetting that 50 Rand, that at the end it needs to go to our total creditors. With those words, allow me to say thank you very much. See you in the next recording.